Grandmother gets a new doctor. The doctor that had been seeing this 80-year-old woman finally retired. At her next checkup, her new doctor told her to bring all of her medicines that had been prescribed to her. As the new doctor was going through them, his eyes grew wide as he realized this grandmother had a prescription for birth control pills. "Mrs. Smith, do you realize these are birth control pills?" "Yes. They help me sleep at night." "Mrs. Smith, I assure you that there is absolutely nothing in these that could possibly help you sleep." The elderly woman reached out and patted the young doctor's knee. "Yes, dear, I know that. But every morning I grind one up and mix it in the glass of orange juice that my 16-year-old granddaughter drinks. Believe me, it definitely helps me sleep at night." "My grandfather died and I inherited some of his clothes. He was a farmer and he loved getting dressed up every year for the local fair and exhibiting his prize chickens. For this occasion, my grandmother would spend the entire year searching through thrift shops looking for silly neckties for him to wear, and she loved finding ones with chickens on them. After a few decades of this, my grandfather had amassed several dozen neckties, each one with cartoonish images of chickens flying around, laying eggs and doing other chicken things. I always complimented him on the newest addition to his collection. When he died a couple of years ago, he bequeathed them to me in his will. When my grandmother handed me the bag full of them, my eyes welled with tears, and I smiled thinking about my grandfather looking in the mirror and straightening his tie. Why am I telling you all of this backstory? Because the last time I tried to tell this to someone and I didn't give context, they thought it was weird that I was so excited about inheriting my dead grandfather's hentai collection. A bereaved widow goes to view her husband's body in the mortuary. The mortuary assistant opens the casket and bows his head solemnly. Upon seeing her husband, the widow starts crying huge tears and wailing loudly. The assistant quickly moves to comfort her. Still wailing, the widow explains that she can't bear to see her husband wearing a suit. In life, he was a clown, and his dying wish was to be buried in the costume he loved so much. Apologizing, the assistant explains that all of the deceased are buried in a suit and that he would see what could be arranged. At the funeral, the widow returns to the mortuary for her final silent moments together with her beloved husband. As the assistant opens the casket, the widow's face breaks, and she manages a sorrowful smile, asking the attendant, "Where did you manage to find a clown costume at such short notice?" With a comforting smile, he replies, "As luck would have it, yesterday afternoon a clown drove his car into the ravine. Surprisingly, the family wanted him to be buried in a suit. Really, it was a simple job to swap their heads." The husband of the woman next door died. After the funeral, the widow shut herself inside the house for most of the day. The only time the widow would leave her home was at the crack of dawn, when she would stand outside and wail loudly in her yard until noon before quickly retreating into her home. The neighbors next door politely ignored her crying, trying their best to respect her grieving. However, their 7-year-old son was perplexed by her behavior. One day, while waiting for the bus, the boy saw the widow doing her usual wailing. Overcome with curiosity, he walked over to her and tugged on her sleeve. "Ma'am, why are you sad?" She looked at him, wiping tears from her eyes. "My dear husband passed away." "Yes, but why are you always crying this early in the day?" "I guess I'm just a morning person." Jack and Joe go on a road trip, but after driving for an hour, the car breaks down. They get it working, but they're seriously delayed and will never make it to the hotel they were going to stay at in time. Upon seeing a farmhouse just off the road, they drive in and ask if they can park in the barn and stay in their car for the night to keep warm. The woman who owns the farm is unsure and says, "I am a widow. People will talk if you stay here overnight." But the men assure her they'll be gone before sunrise and no one will ever know, so she lets them stay. About 9 months later, Jack rings Joe and asks, "Did you sneak off that night we stopped in a barn on our road trip to go and see the widow?" Joe responds, "Well, actually I did, yes. Why do you ask? Did you give her my name and address, Joe, instead of yours?" "Well, yes, I'm afraid I did. Why, is there a problem?" "Oh, no, it's fine," replies Jack. She died and left everything to me. A drunk man who smelled like beer sat down on a subway seat next to a priest. The man's tie was stained, his face was smeared with red lipstick, and a half-empty bottle of gin was sticking out of his torn coat pocket. He opened his newspaper and began to read. After a few minutes, the man turned to the priest and asked, "Say, Father, what causes arthritis?" The priest replies, "My son, it's caused by loose living, being with cheap, wicked women, too much alcohol, and contempt for your fellow man." "Well, I'll be darned," the drunk muttered, returning to his newspaper. The priest, thinking about what he said, nudged the drunk and apologized. "I'm sorry to come on so strong. How long have you had arthritis?" "I don't have it, Father. I was just reading here that the Pope does." A family of 5 is going on vacation. They've rented an RV for the cross-country trip. They loaded the RV with household items, clothing, recreational gear, pets, and food. Off they go. The car crashes into a brick wall minutes after starting the journey. Everyone is killed except the pet monkey. Police investigate but can't find a reason for the crash. They bring the monkey in for questioning. Police: "What was the mother doing before the crash?" Monkey pantomimes applying lipstick using the rear-view mirror. Police: "She had the mirror turned. This might have caused the crash." Police: "What were the kids doing before the crash?" Monkey pantomimes, kids fighting. Police: "The kids caused a distraction. This might have caused the crash." Police: "What was the dad doing before the crash?" Monkey pantomimes, drinking out of a bottle. Police: "The father was drinking. This might have caused the crash." Police: "What were you doing before the crash?" Monkey pantomimes, holding a steering wheel and driving. 3 guys went on spring vacation and booked 3 rooms at a hotel. When they got to the hotel, the clerk said there were no reservations in the computer for them, but they had an opening in a suite they had. So they said, okay. Then the clerk gave them the key, said it was on the 30th floor, and the elevator was broken, so they would have to use the stairs. They said, okay, and made a deal. The first guy would tell funny stories on the first 10 flights. The second guy would tell scary stories on the second 10 flights, and the third would tell sad stories on the last 10 flights. So the first guy told stories and they walked slowly. Then the second guy told stories and they sped up when they got scared. Last, the third guy told sad stories, and at the last stair he said, "Want to hear the saddest story in the world?" And the other guy said, "Okay, tell us." He said, "I left the key in the lobby." A monkey is sitting in a tree smoking a joint when a lizard walks past. The lizard looks up and says to the monkey, "Hey, what are you doing?" The monkey says, "Smoking a joint. Come up and join me, my cold-blooded friend." So the lizard climbs up and sits next to the monkey, and they have another joint. After a while, the lizard says his mouth is dry and that he's going to get a drink from the river. At the riverbank, the lizard is so stoned that he leans too far over and falls in. A crocodile sees this and swims over to the stoned lizard, helping him to the side. He then asks the lizard, "What's the matter with you?" The lizard explains to the crocodile that he was sitting in the tree, smoking a joint with his new monkey friend. He then explained how his mouth got dry and that he was so wasted that when he went to get a drink from the river, he fell in. The inquisitive crocodile says he has to check this out. He walks into the jungle and finds the tree where the monkey is sitting, finishing a joint. He looks up and says, "Hey, monkey." The monkey looks down and says, "Dude, how much water did you drink?" The day after a man lost his wife in a scuba diving accident, he was greeted by 2 grim-faced policemen at his door. "We're sorry to call on you at this hour, Mr. Wilkins, but we have some information about your wife." "Well, tell me," the man said. The policeman said, "We have some bad news, some good news, and some really great news. Which do you want to hear first?" Fearing the worst, Mr. Wilkins said, "Give me the bad news first." So the policeman said, "I'm sorry to tell you, sir, but this morning we found your wife's body in the bay." "Oh, my God," said Mr. Wilkins, overcome by emotion. Then, remembering what the policeman had said, he asked, "What's the good news?" "Well," said the policeman, "when we pulled her up, she had 2 5-pound lobsters and a dozen good-sized Dungeness crabs on her." "If that's the good news, then what's the great news?" Mr. Wilkins demanded. The policeman said, We're going to pull her up again tomorrow morning. Once upon a time in a village, a man appeared and announced to the villagers that he would buy monkeys for $10 each. The villagers, seeing that there were many monkeys around, went out to the forest and started catching them. The man bought thousands at $10, and as supply started to diminish, the villagers stopped their effort. He further announced that he would now buy at $20. This renewed the efforts of the villagers, and they started catching monkeys again. Soon, the supply diminished even further, and people started going back to their farms. The offer increased to $25 each, and the supply of monkeys became so little that it was an effort to even see a monkey, let alone catch it. The man now announced that he would buy monkeys at $50. However, since he had to go to the city on some business, his assistant would now buy on behalf of him. In the absence of the man, the assistant told the villagers, "Look at all these monkeys in the big cage that the man has collected. I will sell them to you at $35, and when the man returns from the city, you can sell them to him for $50 each." The villagers rounded up all their savings and bought all the monkeys. They never saw the man nor his assistant, only monkeys everywhere. Now you have a better understanding of how the cryptocurrency market works. A woman from Chicago was driving alone through the wide-open desert in Arizona when her car suddenly broke down. No cell service, no traffic, just silence and sand for miles. Just as panic started to creep in, a Native American man appeared on horseback. "Need a ride into town?" he asked calmly. Grateful, she climbed up behind him, and they began the journey through the desert. The ride was peaceful, except for one strange thing. Every few minutes, the man would suddenly shout, "Yah-haw!" His voice bounced off the canyon walls like thunder. The woman said nothing, unsure what to make of it. Eventually, they reached a small town. The man let out one last joyful yell and trotted off. She headed straight to a nearby mechanic to get help with her car. The mechanic looked up and asked, "Everything all right, miss?" "Yes," she said, "but I'm a little confused. The man who gave me a ride kept yelling, 'Yeehaw!' the whole time. Any idea why?" The mechanic grinned and asked, "Well, what were you holding on to during the ride?" She replied, "Just the horn on the saddle so I wouldn't fall." He burst out laughing. "Lady, that man wasn't using a saddle." A man is working out with a blonde nearby. He gets hot while doing his sets, so he takes off his shirt. The blonde winks and says, "Wow, you got some nice pecs there." The man smirks and says, 100 pounds of pure dynamite, babe," and returns to his workout. A few minutes go by, and he gets hotter, so he takes off his pants. The blonde winks again and says, "Wow, you've got some nice calves, too." The man smiles and says, 100 pounds of pure dynamite, babe, and returns to his workout. After another few minutes, he gets so hot that he takes off his underwear. With no hesitation, the blonde screams and runs away. The man chased her down, and when he caught up to her, he asked, "What was that all about? Why did you run away from me like that?" Blonde says, "I was afraid to be around all that dynamite when I saw how short the fuse was." A white guy, a black guy, and a Chinese guy go to work at a coal mine. When they arrive, the manager assigns each of them a task. The white guy, Frank, is in charge of digging. The black guy, Jamal, is in charge of transportation. The Chinese guy, Wong, is in charge of supplies. They get to work and everything is going smoothly. Frank is digging up the coal at a rapid pace. Jamal is quickly transporting the coal, and the two have quite the efficient operation going. Slowly, Frank's pick begins to go dull and his shovel handle is breaking off. Jamal's transportation cart has a rickety wheel, and they need replacements from their supply man, Wong. However, Wong is nowhere to be found. In fact, no one has seen him all day long. Frustrated, Frank and Jamal go to find the manager and explain the situation. The manager is equally upset. The three of them go about the mine looking to find Wong. They search high and low, but Wong can't be found anywhere. Extremely frustrated and about to give up, they decide to take a look down a dark abandoned shaft. They peek their heads in, and suddenly Wong jumps out of nowhere and yells, "Surprise!" A naked girl lay on top of her boyfriend. "Something's getting big," she said. The boyfriend replied, "Glad you finally noticed. I can barely put it in. You're so fat." A teacher told her young class to ask their parents for a family story with a moral at the end of it, and to return the next day to tell their stories. In the classroom the next day, Joe gave his example first. My dad is a farmer, and we have chickens. One day, we were taking lots of eggs to the market in a basket on the front seat of the truck when we hit a big bump in the road. The basket fell off the seat, and all the eggs broke. The moral of the story is not to put all your eggs in one basket. Very good, said the teacher. Next, Mary said, we are farmers too. We had 20 eggs waiting to hatch, but when they did, we only got 10 chicks. The moral of this story is not to count your chickens before they're hatched. Very good, said the teacher again, very pleased with the response so far. Next, it was Barney's turn to tell his story. My dad told me this story about my Aunt Karen. Aunt Karen was a flight engineer in the war and her plane got hit. She had to bail out over enemy territory, and all she had was a bottle of whiskey, a machine gun, and a machete. Go on, said the teacher, intrigued. Aunt Karen drank the whiskey on the way down to prepare herself. Then she landed right in the middle of 100 enemy soldiers. She killed 70 of them with the machine gun until she ran out of bullets. Then she killed 20 more with the machete till the blade broke, and then she killed the last 10 with her bare hands. Good heavens, said the horrified teacher. What did your father say was the moral of that frightening story? The child said, stay away from Aunt Karen when she's been drinking. John decided to go skiing with his buddy Keith, so they loaded up John's minivan and headed north. After driving for a few hours, they got caught in a terrible blizzard. So they pulled into a nearby farm and asked the attractive lady who answered the door if they could spend the night. I realize it's terrible weather out there, and I have this huge house all to myself, but I'm recently widowed, she explained, and I'm afraid the neighbors will talk if I let you stay in my house. Don't worry, John said. We'll be happy to sleep in the barn, and if the weather breaks, we'll be gone at first light. The lady agreed, and the two men found their way to the barn and settled in for the night. Come morning, the weather had cleared, and they got on their way and enjoyed a great weekend of skiing. But about 9 months later, John got an unexpected letter from an attorney. It took him a few minutes to figure it out, but he finally determined that it was from the attorney of that attractive widow he had met on the skiing weekend. He dropped in on his friend Keith and asked, Keith, do you remember that good-looking widow from the farm we stayed at on our skiing holiday about 9 months ago? Yes, I do, said Keith. Did you, happen to get up in the middle of the night, go up to the house and pay her a visit? Well, yes, Keith said, a little embarrassed about being found out. I have to admit that I did. And did you happen to give her my name instead of telling her your name? Keith's face turned beet red and he said, yeah, look, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm afraid I did. Why do you ask? Well, she just died and left me everything. A farmer one day decides he'd like to multiply his pigs, but only has 2 sows, so he takes them to a farm a ways away with some impressive hogs to breed them with. He gets there on the first day, and after the deed is done, he asks the other farmer, say, how will I know it worked? To which the other farmer says that if they are eating grass tomorrow morning, it's a good sign. So he takes the pigs home, wakes up in the morning, and sees they aren't eating any grass. So he loads them back up and takes them to the breeder. The next morning he looks out and sees they still aren't eating grass, so back to the breeder they go. The 4th morning, the farmer is a little tired, so he just tells his wife, honey, could you just look out the window and tell me if the pigs are eating grass? So she goes over, takes a look, and says to him, well, they aren't eating grass, but they are sitting in the truck and honking the horn. A newly married couple make their way to bed and everything is going well until, ooh, oh, look at that! What's wrong with it? Cries the bride. It's just my junk, says the groom, offended. Yes, but what's wrong with it? They're not supposed to look like that. It's all twisted. That's what they look like, he replies. Have you ever seen another man's junk? The bride demands. Well, no, but I'm normal. This is what they look like. No, they don't, she tells him. It's warped. There are all grooves around it. It's supposed to be smooth and straight. Long story short, the argument isn't settled and the marriage remains unconsummated. Next day, the newlyweds are walking around town and the groom announces he needs the bathroom. There's a public gents over there, says the bride. "And while you're in there, take a look at the man next to you. See if his is the same as yours." The groom goes in and returns in a few minutes looking very crestfallen. "You're right," he says. "They are supposed to be smooth and straight, and I found out what I've been doing wrong." "What?" "Well, they all shake theirs dry. I've been wringing mine out." A couple want to have children, but the wife can't get pregnant. So they go to see a priest for advice. The priest tells them they came at the right time since his superior just sent him to Rome for 10 years, and he's leaving tomorrow. "As soon as I get there, I'll immediately light a candle for you," he promises. Time passes, and the priest returns to the little town after 10 years. The first thing he does is visit the couple's home. He can hear a crazy loud noise when he knocks on the door. The wife opens the door. 3 little children are on her arms, a couple of them hiding under her skirt, and others are behind her playing around. The priest counts as many as 10 of them. "Well, this is quite a pleasant surprise," exclaims the priest. "It seems like God listened to my prayer, but where is your dear husband?" "My husband traveled to Rome," says the wife with a tired look on her face. "To Rome? Why on earth would he go to Rome?" "To blow out that bloody candle you lit." A man drove by a farm every day on his way to work, and he always saw a pig in the front yard. One morning on his way in, he noticed the pig had a wooden leg. It was odd, but he put it out of his mind. A couple of weeks later, he saw the pig had a second wooden leg. No longer able to contain his curiosity, he stopped by the next day on his way home and knocked on the farmer's door. An old man answered, and he asked him about the pig with the wooden legs. The old man thought for a few minutes before answering. "Well, son, let me tell you about this here pig. One day I was out plowing in the back 40, and my tractor hit a rut. It tipped over and trapped me under it. I was pinned down and slowly being pushed into the mud where I knew I was going to be smothered and die. This pig saw what happened, ran back to the farm and made a huge ruckus. Then, when people came out to see what was going on, he led them to me. Yep, that pig saved my life that day." The man agreed that was an amazing story, but he still didn't understand about the wooden legs. The old farmer thought some more, then told him another story. "Well, a couple of nights ago, I and the wife were sleeping in the house when the barn caught fire. The wind was kicking up, and it was spreading to the main house. If it weren't for that there pig banging on the windows and squealing and raising Cain, we'd have died in that fire. Pig saved our lives, no doubt about it." The man was flabbergasted. "Sir, I will grant you that is a marvelous animal, but I still don't understand why it has 2 wooden legs." The old farmer looked out into the yard and nodded to the pig. "Son, you must be a city boy, 'cause everybody knows a pig that good you don't eat all at once." Late one night, a police officer was patrolling a desolate area, popular with young couples doing more than just sitting in the dark. Catching his attention was a couple in a car with the interior light on. Moving closer, the cop could see a young man behind the steering wheel reading a newspaper. In the back seat, a young blonde was knitting. The lawman walked up to the vehicle and knocked on the driver's side window. The startled lad rolled it down and said, "Yes, officer?" "What are you doing?" the cop asked. "Isn't it obvious?" the young man replied. "I'm reading today's newspaper." Pointing to the blonde in the back seat, the policeman grunted. "And what's she doing?" "I believe she's knitting a sweater," the guy behind the wheel responded. "How old are you?" the cop inquired. "I'm 22, officer." "And the girl, how old is she?" The dude in the driver's seat looked at his watch and said, "She'll turn 18 in 10 minutes. It is near the end of the school year, the teacher has turned in grades, and there is really nothing more to do. All the children are restless because of this. The teacher says, "Whoever answers the questions I ask first and correctly can leave early today." Little Johnny says to himself, "Good. I want to get out of here. I'm smart and will answer the question." The teacher asked, "Who said 7 years ago?" Before Johnny could open his mouth, Susie said, "Abraham Lincoln." The teacher said, "That's right, Susie. You can go home." Johnny was mad that Susie had answered the question first. The teacher asked another question, "Who said, 'I have a dream'?" Before Johnny could open his mouth, Mary said, "Martin Luther King." The teacher said, "That's right, Mary. You can go." Johnny was even madder than before. The teacher asked, "Who said, Ask not what your country can do for you. Before Johnny could open his mouth, Nancy said, John Kennedy. The teacher said, That's right, Nancy. You may also leave. Johnny was boiling mad that he had not been able to answer any of the questions. Then the teacher turned her back, and Johnny said, I wish these would keep their mouths shut. The teacher turned around and asked, Who said that? Johnny said, Bill Clinton, can I go now? A wealthy man decided to go on a safari in Africa. He took his faithful pet dog along for company. One day, the dog starts chasing butterflies, and before long, he discovers that he is lost. So, wandering about, he notices a leopard heading rapidly in his direction with the obvious intention of having lunch. The dog thinks, Boyo, I'm in deep doo-doo now. He was an Irish setter. Then he noticed some bones on the ground close by and immediately settled down to chew on the bones with his back to the approaching cat. Just as the leopard is about to leap, the dog exclaims loudly, Man, that was one delicious leopard. I wonder if there are any more around here. Hearing this, the leopard halts his attack in mid-stride as a look of terror comes over him and slinks away into the trees. Phew, says the leopard. That was close. That dog nearly had me. Meanwhile, a monkey who had been watching the whole scene from a nearby tree figured he could put this knowledge to good use and trade it for protection from the leopard. So, off he goes. But the dog saw him heading after the leopard with great speed and figured that something must be up. The monkey soon catches up with the leopard, spills the beans, and strikes a deal for himself with the leopard. The cat is furious at being made a fool of and says, Here, monkey, hop on my back and see what's going to happen to that conniving canine. Now the dog sees the leopard coming with the monkey on his back and thinks, What am I going to do now? But instead of running, the dog sits down with his back to his attackers, pretending he hasn't seen them yet. And just when they get close enough to hear, the dog says, Where's that monkey? I just can never trust him. I sent him off half an hour ago to bring me another leopard, and he's still not back. An 85-year-old couple, married for 60 years, had always lived a healthy lifestyle, eating right, exercising daily, never missing a checkup. One day, while flying off on a holiday, their plane crashes and they both tragically die. But when they arrive at the pearly gates, St. Peter greets them with a smile and personally escorts them to their heavenly new home, a sprawling mansion with a gourmet kitchen, a spa-like master bath, and their own private jacuzzi. As the wife admires every luxurious detail, the old man turns to St. Peter and asks, So, how much is all this going to cost us? Peter chuckles. It's heaven, it's all free. Next, they're shown a championship golf course that rivals Augusta. Immaculate greens, endless fairways, and they can play whenever they like. The old man squints and asks, Yeah, but how much are the green fees? Free! Peter replies again, laughing. They head to the clubhouse and find a buffet featuring cuisines from every corner of the world, piled high and cooked to absolute perfection. All right, the man says, suspiciously eyeing the desserts. What's the price for the two of us? Peter just shakes his head. It's all free, and the best part, no calories, no cholesterol, eat whatever you want and never gain a pound. At that, the old man's face turns red. He throws his hat to the ground and starts stomping on it. His wife and Peter rush to calm him down. What's wrong? Asks his wife. The old man glares at her and says, If it weren't for your stupid bran muffins and treadmill every morning, I could have been here 10 years ago. A man goes into his son's room one night to wish him good night. He finds the boy tossing and turning, clearly having a nightmare. He wakes him gently and asks, Are you okay, son? I'm scared. The boy whispers, I had a dream. Auntie Susie died. The father reassures him that Auntie Susie is perfectly fine and sends him back to sleep. The next day, Auntie Susie dies. A week later, same scene. The father checks in at bedtime. The boy is having another nightmare. This time the son says, I dreamt that Granddaddy died. Again, the father calms him down, tells him it's just a dream. But the next day, Granddaddy dies. Another week passes. The father, now a bit anxious, finds his son distressed again. The son looks up and says, I dreamt. You died, Daddy. The man tries to smile, pats the boy on the head and says, Well, good night, son. before tiptoeing out of the room, absolutely terrified. The next day, he drives extra carefully, skips breakfast and lunch, avoids people, avoids elevators, even hides under his desk. Every moment is pure dread. Finally, he makes it home alive, heart pounding, and breathes a huge sigh of relief as he steps through the front door. "Honey," he says, "you wouldn't believe the day I've had. I thought I was going to die." She looks at him and says, "You think you had a bad day? The milkman dropped dead on the doorstep this morning."